I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Glad to be here and glad to have you along today. Today is International Women's Day. We salute two women here and around the world, acknowledging their leadership, their gifts, their power, and in gratitude for the partnership that they mean with us and for us and to us. So obviously today we at the station at KFAI, we're doing a program dedicated to International Women's Day. So this program today is not being broadcast on KFAI, but we're going straight to our social media platforms, to YouTube, to Facebook, and to Twitter. And we would like to have you join the conversation. We're going to put in our chat, I think, in our comment section, the address for you joining the conversation. If you want to talk about whatever's on your mind, we'd love to have you in the conversation. I've got a couple of things to talk about. One is to pick up on the conversation yesterday with Tyrone Terrell. Tyrone and Brenda Lyle Gray and I looked at the pending strike. St. Paul schools and Minneapolis schools both were facing strikes by unions, Minnesota Federation of Teachers, Minneapolis Federation of Teachers, MFT, and I think the other allied unions, I'll give them to you momentarily, were in negotiation. So I pulled up to begin with, just to start today's conversation, a couple of articles that I'll sort of summarize and talk about. And if you want to weigh in on what's happening in Twin Cities, we'd love to have your voice. The link is in the comment section. Click on, and we can see if we can bring you into the conversation. I'm looking at an article that was in the Twin Cities Pioneer Press at twincitiespioneerpress.com. And the article was updated about an hour ago, I think. And it says that St. Paul teachers and the district avert strike, but Minneapolis schools don't. And I'll summarize it. It's an article by Josh Burgess, published, I think, yesterday afternoon and updated again at about 10 o'clock this morning or so. And in summary, it says that the St. Paul district reached a contract agreement with its teachers on Monday night, actually minutes before the district had planned to call off its classes today, Tuesday. And the St. Paul Federation of Teachers declared that a strike had been avoided, that a deal had been reached. And Superintendent Joe Gothard said he was thankful that both bargaining teams were able to come up with solutions that, in his words, honor what is best for our students. And he said that he believed that they'd have arrived at a fair and equitable agreement that respects collective desires to do right by the students while working within the district's budget and enrollment limitations. Well, yesterday's conversation with Tyrone Terrell, Tyrone representing 4 organizations out of the St. Paul Leadership Forum, the Black Leadership Group, raised the question about how do we keep the interest of the students front and center? How do we ensure that, it's not about Tyrone said, while he supports better and equitable wages for teachers and workers, and he supports, the challenges that districts have trying to make things work budget-wise. But he said, how do you look at using the environment that we're in now, with schools having been delayed somewhat and hampered by COVID-19 and the protocols associated therein, and summer coming, what would a strike look like? How much damage would a strike do? And because he thought the situation was particularly volatile and exacerbated, he said the St. Paul Black Leadership Coalition was recommending against not supporting a teacher strike at this point in time. So, and he said he couldn't rationalize, even though he supported the wage demands, disadvantaging the students. So back to the article by Josh Burgess. The article in the St. Paul Pioneer Press talked about class size. That was a concern, and caps, increased mental health supports, guaranteed recess time for students, and also one-time recognition payments and increased compensation, particularly for educational assistants. And the article goes on to say that the St. Paul deal really emerged on the fourth day of mediation, and it would have been the second teacher strike in as many bargaining cycles. The union wanted, I'm quoting the article, the union wanted a 2-year contract that guarantees smaller class sizes and staffers dedicated to students' mental health, as well as higher wage and better benefits for its 4,250 teachers, educational assistants, and school and community service professionals. Well, the district, the article goes on to say, was projecting a $43 million deficit next school year. And that figure, it said, anticipated a drop in enrollment, but not a corresponding savings from salaries and benefits, because it presumed that there'd be no state funding increase this spring. Minneapolis, on the other hand, now I'm referring to an article that I see let's see, the source of this piece is NPR News. The headline is Minneapolis teachers begin strike, St. Paul educators and district reach tentative agreement. And this article, again, was like last night at about 6 o'clock, but updated this morning at 6:30. And it says, I'll paraphrase it, that the negotiations between the Minneapolis Public School District and its teachers union on a new contract have failed, and a strike is set to begin Tuesday, a union leader confirmed. And Greta Callahan, head of the teachers chapter of the Minneapolis Federation of Teachers, made the announcements late in the afternoon yesterday. In a statement, officials described that the school district's leadership, they called them entrenched in unacceptable status quo. And the article goes on to say that the strike was widely expected because the district has said the two sides were millions of dollars apart. And the district had said a strike would shutter classrooms for more than 30,000 kids and have about 4,000 teachers and staff out of work. And so there's no indication, according to this article, that of when talks might resume. Well, the strike is going on right now. And AZ, do you see anything going on with the strike? We were watching the web stream of Georgia Fort. And if you can pull that up, let's get a sense of what's going on at the strike protest as we speak. So we got a little pixelation in that. I'll try it again. I was going to have AZ pull up and share the stream by media. Here it is. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, camera.
Hello, camera. Are you in Georgia?
This is my dad.
This is a stream by independent journalist Georgia Ford. Now, I am not sure if this is a live stream. AZ, you can tell me in the chat, or if this is a stream from earlier today. And I'm trying to see where the location is to recognize the bridge in the background. But maybe, again, AZ, do you know if this is actual live right now, or is this from earlier today? So this is live. Great. So let me go back and read some more of the NPR News report. Again, quoting from NPR News, a story updated at 6:30 this morning. The story was reported by Matt Sepik and Tim Nelson, filed originally on March 7th, updated today, March 8th at 6:30 in the morning. And I'll just pull excerpts of the article out to give you an idea of how and why the strike is proceeding in Minneapolis. Let's see. So here's a quote from the Minneapolis School District, open quote. While it's disappointing to hear this news, we know that our organization's mutual priorities are based on our deep commitment to the education of Minneapolis students, close quote, Minneapolis Public Schools said in a statement, open quote. Minneapolis Public Schools, or MPS, will remain at the mediation table nonstop in an effort to reduce the length and impact of the strike, close quote. Paraphrasing the article again, it said that the statement confirmed that all pre-K through 12 grade classes were canceled for the duration of the strike, and the classes known as Transition Plus, I'm not sure what that means, were also closed. They both talked about making community resources available for those who may need childcare. So that's where we are. In St. Paul has averted the strike. Minneapolis has not. And as this article reported, the district said they were miles apart from the strikers. Here's another quote out of the same article, open quote, from Ruth Kreider, a second grade teacher who was in St. Paul. Said nobody wants to go on strike. None of the teachers do. None of the staff wants to. But for the kids and for the students and for the learning environment, it needs to happen. We can bend, but we won't break. In Minneapolis, a meal bag containing breakfast and lunch for students will be available daily. MPS may also have limited childcare spots available on an emergency basis. The district is urging parents to find other child care options. And according to this article on Minnesota Public Radio, the Boys and Girls Club of the Twin Cities said it's waiving its membership fees or annual membership fees for all new members during the strike, but space is limited. The YMCA locations in Minneapolis are going to provide special K through 5 child care. You got to register to get it. And the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board is offering extended hours for elementary age kids at 10 of its recreation centers. A coalition, as I mentioned, of Black civic and educational leaders called the strike a setback for kids of color, and ask teachers in Minneapolis and St. Paul to resolve their differences with the districts. A quote, quoting the pastor of Progressive Baptist Church and president of the St. Paul Black Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance, Pastor Miller. He said, open quote, "At the end of all of this, the ones that will suffer ultimately will be our kids." And this is the challenge. This is why we implore the administrators and teachers to come to some amicable agreement, because the ones that will suffer will be our kids, and kids have been suffering long enough. Well, some traction in St. Paul. St. Paul has averted the strike. Minneapolis has not. Minneapolis teachers and workers are on strike as we speak. The strike began today. The article also goes on to say, and the article makes reference to some of its data came from the Associated Press, that the average salary for St. Paul teachers is more than $85,000 a year, and more than $71,000 per year in Minneapolis. But it says that both districts employ hundreds of lower paid support staffers who often say they don't earn a living wage. And those workers have been the major focus of these talks. Again, the strike is underway in Minneapolis. And AZ, let's go back to the live feed. Georgia Fort, independent journalist, has been monitoring and streaming the strike. So let's see what's going on there now. And again, let me invite, if someone wants to join this conversation, we'd love to have you in the call. So the signal's coming in and out. And it looks like there's a lot of support for the teachers. Diana Hawkins made the comment that young people appear to be supporting the teachers in the teachers' negotiation in this process. Well, if you have a comment or feedback, we'd love to hear from you. The strike is a big issue. It's an important issue. The education of our children, critically important. And the times we're in, challenging, not only because of COVID-19, but also because of the escalation of violence in the Black community in particular, but the city in general, and also the pressure that the escalating war in Ukraine and Russia has on the mind, the psyche, the feelings of ordinary people as we're watching the news cycles and looking at the mayhem and loss of life and destruction of the physical aspects or assets of different cities in Ukraine. It's a lot to try to stay and keep in some kind of sense of normalcy while so much is going on. I wonder again if you have a thought or a comment that you'd like to share. Love to have you join the conversation. I've listed here the StreamYard URL. You can click on that and we'll bring you into the conversation. We'd love to have your comments. In the meantime, let's go back to the strike, AZ. Let's see what's going on with the march and strike in Minneapolis.
And one of the things I think Becky and I have talked about, Denise and I have talked about, that we are really proud of about all of you, is that everyone is standing for a living wage for our least paid workers. Everybody has gone through you know what during COVID. But Minneapolis has gone through so much more harm and hurt. How is it that they try to talk about finding ways to deal with recruiting black and brown teachers, and then they have you on strike doing nothing about having a competitive salary. How dare they? You are the ones that bring opportunity and justice to Minneapolis, not Mr. Graff, Ms. Sullivan, or Mr. Moore. The fact that they have you on strike, look, I'm from New York and I'm Jewish. There's a Yiddish word. The fact they have you on strike is a shanda. It's a shanda. You want to be in schools with our kids, then you need the fairness to actually do the work. Smaller classes, mental health support, and living wages so you can stay in Minneapolis without working 2 or 3 job classes, mental health support, and living wages so on strike. And that is why your 2 national unions and your state union will walk the walk with you every day. When you have people like Sullivan, Moore, and Graff, they don't care. They don't care that you're out here. I heard from Greta and Sean. They should have been doing this weekend what St. Paul was doing this weekend. And instead, they kept on shouting at you. You are on strike for our future. You are on strike for opportunity. You are on strike for justice. And we will win. One day longer, one day stronger. 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 One day longer.
All right, we are in this fight together and we're going to win it. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a few minutes, we're going to get this thing figured out, and we're going to march over to the Davis Center and make sure that folks over there understand that when you put 4,500 MFT members against the wall, we're going to fight back and we're going to win. There's some folks who have our back here from the state legislature. We want to thank Representatives Lee, Greenman, Hassan, and Gomez. We want to thank council members Wansley and Warbla, council member Chavez, and council member Chertai for being out on the picket line, council member Elliott Payne as well. We've got support in every corner of the city. Now let's go and give it some hell. Here we go. Everybody just like wears Crocs. And like, millennials would have never done it. You want to join
was seen this morning, a little while ago. This is a reprint of the stream by journalist George Court, and the rally was to me on Plymouth Avenue in North Minneapolis. That's a place that I drive by every day on the way to my job at the Marcus Garvey House in North Minneapolis. And they were going to march from this location. This is the Educational Service Center where they prepare meals. I could be wrong. And march from there about maybe 6 blocks, half a mile or so, maybe a mile, to the Davis Education Center, which is the headquarters of the Minneapolis Public Schools. In fact, I know that now. I can see this is the Minneapolis Food Service Center on Plymouth Avenue. And so they marched from here. And again, while St. Paul was able to avert the strike, Minneapolis was not. Reporting again or summarizing an article that was written by Matt Sipic, or reported by Matt Sipic and Tim Nelson of NPR News. Their report this morning, originally published yesterday, last night, updated at 6:30 this morning, states that negotiations between the Minneapolis Public School District and teachers have failed, and the strike began today. And while the St. Paul educators say they have reached a tentative agreement with St. Paul schools and they will not strike, as I reported earlier, quoting from another news source, the St. Paul Pioneer Press, the St. Paul teachers in the district came to an agreement some moments before the deadline last night, and they were able to report that there will be no strike, that there's an agreement on the table, and that classes will continue in St. Paul. Not the case in Minneapolis. Teachers' classes were canceled. There is no school for the city of Minneapolis schools. Parents, families have to make arrangements for daycare and for managing how to keep children safe, hopefully learning in some way or another, either at home or in the community. And I quoted at the beginning of this an article, again, that was produced by NPR News. And in summary, I'll sort of give you some of the highlights of that article. Let's see. I'm scrolling through it. I made reference to the comments from Pastor Devin Miller from the St. Paul Black Interdenominational Ministerial Alliance. That article says that several Black pastors said that their churches are going to try to take kids in during the day because parents are working. School district officials have said they're already facing budget shortfalls due to enrollment losses stemming from the pandemic, and they can't spend money they don't have. I mentioned what the salaries are of both districts. So there we are. The strike is underway in Minneapolis. I'm going to spend another minute or two here, and if there's someone listening that wants to weigh in, we'd love to have your comment, your feedback, your analysis. It's an important issue. It affects us all. Affects our families, our neighborhood, our safety. It affects crime even. And we'd love to have your comments on it. The other thing that I'm interested in getting feedback from the public on is the question of what's happening in Russia and Ukraine with the conflict there. I had a chance to talk to a friend of mine that I actually met in Moscow several years ago, and I was there with the American Center for International Leadership on I think a 2-week conference that I attended, a study group. And my friend was actually passing through Minneapolis on his way. He came to the U.S., went to school, and now is a practicing attorney out east. And he and his wife were taking a regular ski trip through and have their airplane stop here in Minneapolis. So he called me up, and it was great to connect with him. I hadn't spoken to him in a while, but he was giving me his take on how the world is looking at, how the U.S. in particular is looking at the conflict in Russia, between Russia and Ukraine. And my takeaway from the conversation was that he described President Putin as an unstable and not predictable person, but who is not driven, even though he's been described as a person who has rallied the oligarchs and consolidated wealth and power around money interest. Be that as it may, that Putin is not driven by money alone. And we've been reading and hearing that President Vladimir Putin has assembled massive wealth, and so have the oligarchs in his group of leadership. So I asked my friend, did he feel the pressures being brought by the U.S. and the NATO partners and world partners to stifle, cripple, deny the use of the wealth that the oligarch class had amassed in Russia? And he said, well, yes, it'll have an impact. It'll have a great impact on ordinary people, not only there, but here as well. And it'll have an impact on the oligarchs themselves because it's their money that's being frozen or taken. And the question is whether they have the strength or the ability to present an argument that Putin will listen to. What my friend told me was that, Putin is not around people that will give him genuine, sort of unbiased, even contrary analyses, contrary to that of his own. He said, Putin doesn't even carry a cell phone or use it. The only information he gets about the world is the information that his inner circle brings to him. And the inner circle is made exclusively of people that will say yes, that a person who is in the power arena, but who has a difference or a competing point of view, will not be there long. He'll find himself or herself in jail or ostracized or banned or worse. And so as a result, what you have in Russia and around Vladimir Putin is a group of people who are simply attuned to what he feels and what he says and can offer him only confirmation of his feelings. And that his feelings are not simply feelings based on the amassing of wealth, though that may be the strategy he's used to consolidate power and support money by bringing in a small group of people with massive wealth and whose interests are always on the line. And to have them produce the advisors, and the advice they produce is advice that keeps them in power, which is advice that keeps him in power. So the question is he similarly motivated by the personal money that the oligarchs are? And my friend said, no, it's not it. And to believe that it's just about money will be to be mistaken. That what in this friend's view motivated Putin was a sense of mission. What's the mission? Putin viewed Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus all as part of the great and historic Slavic community, Slavic world. And what Putin has been doing over the years of his control of Russia since the falling apart of the USSR and since his emergence as the leader of Russia was projecting the idea of what he called is I think a Russian, what was the right word he used? Well, the phrase, I don't have the phrase written down now, but the idea is of a Russian identity. And that Russian identity involves the Slavic people. It's like a pan-Slavic sovereignty, and that involves not just people in Russia who are Slavic in their national origin, but it involves the Ukrainians and the Belorussia community as well, all Slavic as their cultural and national identity. So interesting. He said that, in his view, Ukraine doesn't have clean hands in this affair. So I'm not sure what that means. But it's information that requires that we all look more closely at all of the issues. What I do know is that we all have a stake in this, in as much as unbridled and erratic behavior and responses could trigger nuclear engagement. Nobody wins. Everybody loses. The planet loses. So we all have a stake in trying to hope and to expect that whatever continues to happen, our voices, that sanity prevail, be heard, and guide the resolution of this affair. We all, I think, too, have to show concern for the plight of the families, the children, the men and women who are being displaced, moved, forced out of their homes, and those that are in danger, that are dying in this process. So there's a lot to think about there. Listen, if you want to weigh in on the conversation, we'd love to have you in the conversation. I've listed our StreamYard link, and you can join this conversation. I'd love to hear your point of view on this or on the education issue, or other things that might be on your mind right now. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. Normally, we'd be broadcasting live on KFAI. KFAI program this week was preempted in celebration of Women's History Month. We support that. And so 24 hours of programming on celebrating women going on right now on KFAI. But we've proceeded with our regular programming on our social media platforms, on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. And again, we'd love to have you involved in the conversation as well. So if you want to weigh in, by all means, look at the link, and we're watching, and we'd love to have you in the conversation as well. What else can I talk about right now? I think with that, we're going to wrap up today's program, and thank you for your participation, for your watching. And we'd love to have you help us grow this conversation. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.